hear the word shark and you just think like, it was years and years ago. We're going lobster hunting in the North County of San Diego. So my buddies say, hey, there's leopard sharks out here. And I'm like, whoa, are you crazy? There's sharks out here? We go diving? And they go, oh, they're leopard sharks. They're harmless. And I'm thinking like, yeah, shark, harmless, sure. So sure enough, we're out there. Somebody says, hey, there's a shark out there. And I'm like, where's my buddy? Hide behind him. I look down and I'm like, that's a shark? What am I afraid of? And so with the same stupid reasoning, a shark is a shark is a shark, I just lost my innate fear of sharks. And so now it doesn't matter what kind of shark it is, I don't fear them. I definitely respect them, but there's no like adrenaline pumping, oh my God, this is a shark, what could happen? It's just like, get a little closer, I need to get a picture. Well, I grew up in Switzerland, so what else would I do? No, seriously, I came over here to race bicycles as a professional. And after 18 years of racing, I was like, man, this is a little hard, so let me look for something that's a little more laid back. Got into diving, because that's the only sport I could find where it's the slower the better. And as a dive instructor, I got hired on a liveaboard dive vessel. We started going to Guadalupe Island, started seeing more and more white sharks, and it was like, hey, can we go do commercial shark diving here? Found out it's probably the best place in the world to see great white sharks. And so one thing led to another, and after 12 years of being in charge of the safety for all the divers, the guy that owned the company was asking me if I was interested in buying the company from him, and I'm like, yeah, sure. So for the last 3 years, I've owned Shark Diver. The sharks, along with orcas and some other predatory whales, are really the apex predators in the ocean. And everything is there to keep other things in check. They looked at a place where they were catching reef sharks. They can pretty much eliminate the sharks for that reef in a couple weeks, maybe even less. And what they found is that within a year or so, that reef got bleached. So essentially, corals are living organisms that live on millions of years of their ancestors' bodies or skeletons. So when the corals die, it leaves behind calcium, and that's what the reef is, really what the reef structure is. And it's just the last tiny little bit is the actual animal that's alive. Living coral reef is offering shelter to a bunch of fish. It's offering food to some fish. And so everything is interconnected. So what happens when they take away the sharks? Damselfish, which are, smaller fish, but they're very aggressive, they defend their territory. They're actually the farmers of the ocean. They go on the reef, they cultivate an algae. And on that algae, they're growing their eggs so that the next generation can live. So sharks would keep those damselfish in check. So if the sharks are gone, now nothing is checking these damselfish. So now they're growing their algae all around the coral. They're taking over. Coral dies, and, little by little, everything disappears because the food source is gone, and then you have a bleached out reef. Just about a month ago, the headlines read, deadly shark attacks doubled from last year, which is absolutely true. In 2014, worldwide, there were 3 deadly shark attacks. In 2015, there were 6. The chances of getting bit by a shark, and I think last year it was like 96 people that got bit by sharks, but you got to realize too that if a small shark, like a dogfish or something, bites someone in a toe, that's a shark attack. Contrast that to 450,000 people get bit by their own dogs. I would be more afraid if you see your neighbor walk the dog than a shark in the ocean trying to bite you. I'm not necessarily sure if the media is creating that fear or if it's just feeding that fear, because we are terrestrial animals. So I've literally seen a lady try to hold up her baby to a black bear in the middle of the winter that came out. I'm like, this is a hungry bear. What are you doing? But, oh, it's a teddy bear. But you go in the water and it's like, this is not our environment. So we fear what's there. And then, of course, the media feeds into that. Take last year when Mick Fanning got attacked by a shark. Even Mick himself said he wasn't attacked. It was a shark that got caught in his line because... Unlike, a lot of animals, if we walk into something and an animal walks into a wall, well, let's just back up and go a different way. Oh, a shark doesn't have a reverse. So once they hit something, the only way to go is forward. So if a shark is caught in something like McFanning's leash, keeps going forward. If he goes forward and down, well, naturally, the surfer and the surfboard who are attached to that leash are going to be pulled in the water. And then either the leash breaks or it gets free and they pop up. No harm, no foul. But because the cameras were rolling, even today, the media still says, oh, that was a shark attack, and he is a shark attack survivor. Well, there was no attack at all, but that's how it's portrayed. The most dangerous time to go in the water is dusk and dawn, because you have two kinds of animals in the ocean typically, the ones that are active during the day and the ones that are active at night. So when there's a shift change, just like before you go to bed or right when you wake up, you're not at your most alert, so predators are more apt to go hunting during that time. The most dangerous place to be is on the surface, because for ages, for a shark, anything that floats on the surface has been food. When do surfers go in the water? Before and after work, dusk and dawn. How often do they get attacked? From 1900 to 2000, I think there were 12 or 13 deadly shark attacks. So we're looking at one every 9 years. So now we're really going like, okay, so how dangerous is it? They're in the most dangerous place, most dangerous time, and at the most dangerous place on the water, and still it hardly ever happens. Sharks are the airplanes of the ocean. Flying is the safest way to travel, but it's also the most feared. Same with the sharks. You hear the word shark and people are afraid, but it's not based on anything real. It's just an innate fear of something we don't know. When it comes to blood in the water, people also think, oh, if you're bleeding, you go in the water, you're toast. My theory is actually a little bit different, and it's just a theory. I can't prove it because, you don't have volunteers that are actually going out there to try it out. But because the sharks have such an incredibly sensitive sense of smell, they can differentiate between human blood, fish blood. I mean, they can differentiate between the blood of a mackerel and the tuna blood. So they can really know, oh, this is really what I like and this is what I don't like. So I actually think if you're bleeding, you're letting the shark know what you are, and it can smell this and go like, that's not what I want. And it could almost be a deterrent for a shark bite because you're letting the shark know what it actually wants to know about you, what you are. Some sharks are very gregarious. They live in bigger groups. Other sharks, they are more solitary but come together for mating. For example, the white sharks are typically very much into their personal space. So you don't see them really touching each other. But they do hang out together at Guadalupe Island, the Farallones, and at some other aggregation site. But they're not like reef sharks that would literally be sleeping next to each other in the same area. Or bull sharks. When we dive in Fiji with the bull sharks, we can have up to 70 bull sharks around. They're touching each other, very close to each other, and they don't seem to mind each other. I have seen a lot of teasing of sharks going on, not just by dolphins, but by their prey animals, like the seals. I've seen little seals that would just swim up to a white shark, bite it in the tail. That may seem like, there's a brave little seal that does that, but you got to keep in mind that sharks are ambush predators. So if they see that their prey animal, or potential prey animal, sees them, they pretty much know they don't have a chance. I actually had a really interesting question on the ship last year where someone said, well, why should we protect sharks? Because the oceans are overfished. The sharks, they're not trophy hunting, so they're not looking at like, that's the fastest fish, let's go after that. They're going after the weak, the diseased, the injured, and thus ensure that the dominant and the healthy survive and reproduce, and that ensures a healthy stock of the prey fish. So they're really important in actually keeping the lower tier fish healthy and alive. Jaws, in a way, has been the worst and the best thing that ever happened to sharks. On the bad part, obviously, right after the movie came out, there were tons of people going out trying to slaughter these sharks. But it's also created a lot of interest in the sharks. And I can't tell you how many people come out with us to go diving with the sharks that have seen Jaws and they think, oh, I got to face that fear. And ironically, I don't think in 15 years of doing this, there were more than maybe a handful of customers that came out that when they did see a white shark for the first time and they're face to face with them, that said that, oh, it was adrenaline pumping. I was like, oh my God, I see a shark. Most of them, they just come out and go like, wow. Because it's almost a serene, tranquil experience because they're swimming by. They don't have dead black eyes like they tell you in the movie Jaws. They actually have blue eyes. What fascinated me, what got me hooked on shark diving was not a shark biting this or biting that. It was actually after about 3 trips to Guadalupe, I'm thinking like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this. And I was in a cage, and at the time, Shredder, a shark that we've known was around every single year since 2001, he swam by and he was like, his eye was looking at me, and then it popped to the next person. I'm like, the dude's checking me out. And something happened. And it wasn't a threatening thing. It was just cruising by. But before that, I kind of thought, well, the shark is just swimming by the cage. And I don't know what it's thinking. It's probably just looking at that whole thing as a whole. But no, it's actually checking out individual people in there. And it wasn't a threatening thing. It was just a curiosity thing. And I've been hooked ever since.